A Walmart parking lot near Runnymede and St. Clair. Tonight, the latest on the search for a killer. Plus,
48 hours before you're expected to start teaching a class, you're told what you're teaching, So go back to the curriculum documents, go back to planning lessons, and start.
The staffing scramble at the TDSB. What's going on behind the scenes as Canada's largest school board delays the return of high school students?
We're going to have movies and drive-ins, and we have a whole new digital platform as well.
It's a very different TIFF this year. No red carpets, no celeb sightings. So what's in store for opening night? And
what we're trying to do is try to keep this live music alive here in the city.
The El Mocambo is back. Toronto's iconic venue will be rocking tonight with a rare concert during the pandemic. Police are on the scene of the city's latest homicide in a Walmart parking lot. It happened around 1:45 this afternoon while the store was busy with shoppers. Angelina King is live at the scene for us right now. Angelina, what can you tell us?
Well, Dwight, some shoppers actually saw the victim after he was shot. So you can imagine some people really shaken up tonight, coming to Walmart just to do their shopping and then experiencing the aftermath of a fatal shooting. So right now, there's still a large part of the parking lot is still blocked off with police tape and forensic investigators, homicide detectives on scene looking for evidence, speaking with witnesses, trying to figure out exactly what led to this shooting. Now, I spoke with a man a little bit earlier who says that he pulled into the parking lot right after everything happened. He says that he saw the man on the ground, and then right before that, he saw an SUV speed out of the parking lot. He says that's when he knew something was wrong.
I pulled into the parking lot as the presumably perpetrator was squealing away from the scene. He was driving a white Acura sport utility, but he was going at a great rate of speed, squealing tires, cutting through between the parked cars. And then I saw him on the ground, and at first I thought he'd been hit by a car, and then I realized afterwards he'd been shot.
So police now looking for that white SUV. They say just one person was inside at the time. They haven't released a detailed description of the suspect or any information about the victim, but his body remains on scene right now. It's just beside that cart return in the parking lot, and police just put up that second tarp there as they wait for the coroner to come and remove the body. Now, you're probably seeing a lot of cars in the parking lot in between the police tape as well. These cars have been parked here since the shooting happened. They can't be removed until after the scene is cleared. And during all of this, the Walmart has remained open. A lot of people coming through and quite concerned after learning there's been yet another brazen shooting in the city. Dwight?
Yeah, developing story there for us tonight. Thank you, Angelina. 2 people were injured in a drive-by shooting in North York last night. Police responded to reports of shots fired and people running near Bathurst and Wilson around 9:30. Police say one victim walked into a nearby restaurant. The man in his 20s was taken to hospital with a gunshot wound to the shoulder. His injuries are considered non-life-threatening. Another person was grazed by a bullet and treated on scene. Police described a possible suspect vehicle as a red sedan, last seen heading northbound on Collinson Boulevard. Premier Doug Ford called the quarantine system broken today, saying federal health officers need to charge more people who ignore self-isolation orders. He says police in Ontario have uncovered more than 600 violations, yet very few people have been reprimanded.
We can't have our police running around and seeing people breaking quarantine and nothing happens to them, a slap on the wrist. It turns into be a joke. So I'm going to work with the federal government and we'll get that turned around.
Since the end of March, an emergency order has required most people arriving from outside Canada to isolate themselves for 14 days, even if they don't have symptoms. Federal quarantine officers can lay charges with penalties of up to 6 months in jail and fines of up to $750,000. Police can only issue tickets of up to $1,000. The Toronto District School Board says the complex task of sorting out staffing and timetables for high schools is forcing them to push back the start of classes. Alicia Son has more now on what teachers are facing as they prepare for students to return.
The school start date has been pushed back to next Thursday for most TDSB students because of, quote, complexities in the secondary staffing and timetable process. In other words, it's a mess.
Admin was working all weekend. I know administrators didn't have a weekend. They spent the whole weekend rebuilding their timetables so that teachers can be told what they're teaching, today and tomorrow. And then you have to re-timetable students.
The TDSB may have been granted an extension on their back-to-school assignment, but they're still cramming, figuratively and literally.
The reality is, 48 hours before you're expected to start teaching a class, you're told what you're teaching, so go back to the curriculum documents, go back to planning lessons, and start. I think that the level of preparedness will be as good as it can be. But
Shannon Russell is the director of special education at a TDSB high school. Some of those students start on Monday, the original start date.
They're definitely getting the lion's share of the PPE and sort of some of that resourcing right now.
Her husband is a teacher in a Toronto neighborhood with a high risk of COVID-19.
I know he's doing some creative Tetris with his classroom to try to give as much distance as is possible in some really sort of tight, confined spaces.
Teachers have been sharing photos on Twitter of their attempt at spacing desks 2 meters apart, many saying it's not possible. Education Minister Stephen Lecce's office didn't respond to seeing the classroom photos, but in a statement said, quote, "We recognize that school boards have developed plans that best suit their local needs. We will never hesitate from taking further action to protect the health and safety of Ontario students and education staff." The NDP education critic characterizes it as an unfair wait-and-see situation with a lot at stake.
To see the Minister of Education here, Stephen Lecce, and the Premier talk about, we'll add new layers if we need it of protections in our schools. What I think parents are saying, as well as educators and students too, is, throw it all at us right now. Give us every support. Let's make this work. Because if we approach this just as it's doomed to fail anyways, we're back at square one.
We're just told to do the best we can. And teachers are fixers. This is a situation where a lot of us are used to sort of finessing our way through some of these logistical problems, and we can't finesse more space if there isn't any.
Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
When high school students do return, they are going to be without extracurricular activities. The TDSB is putting all extracurriculars on hold to start the year. Nick Boisvert has more on that decision and what it means for the students who had big plans for their last year of secondary school.
In an ordinary year, games at this outdoor court would be just a preview of something bigger to come. But for high school students in 2020, this might be all the basketball they get.
Us personally, we have plans to, because we didn't make the playoffs last year, right? So we're trying to make the playoffs, trying to go far in it, trying to show our worth in this community. And so I guess that got crushed.
For Joel Boadi Boateng, the loss cuts even deeper. He was banking on a big grade 12 year to draw the attention of some college and university coaches.
I feel like basketball could be away from me, especially money-wise when it comes to tuition, because scholarships help out a lot.
But sports and all the usual extracurriculars are on hold to start the school year. The decision is based on provincial reopening guidelines, which call for physical distancing and limiting contact between students.
Big part of school are the extracurricular activities. You can go to school, you can study, and then you're going to come home and you're going to think, did I have fun? Did I enjoy it?
While some of those fun activities like sports, theater, and music are out, the TDSB says individual schools can explore options for smaller clubs or virtual replacements. Whether teachers are willing to volunteer is another question.
Lots of them love doing extracurriculars. It's one of the kind of highlights of their work with their students. But I'm sure there will be a fair bit of trepidation around adding to their contacts.
For grade 12s, it also means university applications that may seem a little weaker.
It definitely does hold me back from a couple of schools, but I guess there really isn't anything that I can do about it. I guess everyone in my position right now is going through the same thing.
Nick Boisvert, CBC News, Toronto.
NDP leader Jagmeet Singh was in Brampton today speaking with parents and students as kids get back to class. The NDP is calling on the federal government to invest more money in schools and in childcare.
We believe very firmly there can be no recovery without investments in childcare so that parents and particularly women can get back to work. We know that parents and students are worried about the impacts of COVID-19, and we've got a responsibility as a society to make the right choices.
During COVID-19, women's participation in the Canadian workforce has fallen to a level not seen in decades. Back in July, the feds announced over $600 million for Canada's childcare sector to help ensure enough spaces are available so more parents can get back to work. Regarding safety in schools, Singh says the biggest concern he's hearing from parents is that class sizes are too large. Late last month, the feds committed $2 billion for a safe return to school, with Ontario getting the biggest slice of that funding pie, about $763 million.
Incredibly frustrating. We had planned to open April 1st, and as it turned out, I think the April Fool's joke was on me.
5 years and a pandemic later, Toronto's iconic music venue has opened its doors. We will bring you to the new and improved El Mocambo coming up. So, Colette, you scared the heck out of me today.
What?
I'm listening to you and Jill on Here and Now this afternoon, and Colette comes on here and says, I saw a big fireball in the sky. And I'm like, huh? I'm looking out my window, and you were talking about the sun.
I knew you were going one of two directions, so it was a fireball. Yes. Well, we haven't seen it in a few days, or very little of it. Yeah, that fireball's the sun. I've got something else that might have scared you. I did mention a frost advisory too, but that's way to the north of us. I'm going to show you that one as well. We're going to be seeing much more of that fireball. It's coming our way. Temperatures, though, we could, what a struggle to get out of these teens because of all the cloud cover. We're going to be seeing so much more of the sun because we're getting into a clearing trend. But that is doing another thing, and because it's going to be clearing those skies out, it's going to allow some of that cooler air to be moving in, and it means some single digits for our friends in communities to the north of us. The low temperature tonight, forecast low for Parry Sound, 0, a big fat 0, freezing mark, and that is why there is a frost advisory. Can you believe it? Those clearing skies are going to allow some very chilly temperatures there. We are not yet having to contend with that. I thought that might be the other thing that was scaring Dwight a little bit there. No, we've got that sun coming back because we get that clearing tonight. We'll have some chillier temperatures there too, but we're talking about a low of about 11 degrees we'll be seeing tonight, and then improving for tomorrow because of that sun. We're headed to a high of about 20 degrees for tomorrow. Looking good into the weekend. I'll have that forecast coming up, Dwight.
Thank you, Colette.
You're welcome.
The weather is brought to you by Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. We test, so it runs. It's hard to stop a train.
The Commissioner of Canada Elections says former Finance Minister Bill Morneau violated a part of the Elections Act last summer. He promoted prospective Liberal candidates in the lead-up to the federal election during his capacity as minister. Morneau must now pay a fine of $300 for promoting these candidates and must post a copy of the findings on his personal website or social media channels. The We Charity is shutting down its Canadian operations, but it's not the end of the line for the organization's projects around the world, and it also won't put an end to the work of one activist who was closely tied to the charity. Chris Glover explains.
Star-studded We Day Youth Empowerment events are now off the agenda for Canadian students.
We succeed when we have purpose in our lives.
They were wrong. She survived.
Blogger Hannah Alper grew up on stages for We Charity.
Our voices were heard and added to other young voices. We saw that we could change the future.
You grew up with this organization, so now learning this news that they're winding down their operations in Canada, how are you feeling today?
Sad. To be completely honest, sad, because I know that there are so many thousands, if not millions, of young lives that were impacted by them, both in Canada and around the world.
Thank you, We Day, for this warm welcome.
The charity came under the spotlight for close ties to the Prime Minister when it was awarded a lucrative student grant contract. Many on the board of directors resigned and corporate sponsors bailed too.
Over the past 7 months, We Charity has experienced a series of unprecedented challenges.
Co-founder Craig Kielburger says the charity will shift things to an endowment fund
to ensure the long-term operations of all of our programs around the world and the continued access to the educational resources for children right here at home in Canada.
The NDP says the We Charities shutdown shows the Liberals bungled the student grant program and squandered millions of dollars during the pandemic.
There could have been immediate supports that went directly to students instead of a program which is clearly designed to help out close friends and to enrich members of the Liberal government instead of helping students.
The charity is selling most of its Toronto real estate, including its Global Learning Centre on Queen Street East. Originally under the name Free the Children, the Kielburger brothers started the charity in the 1990s.
I believe that we can make a difference, one action at a time.
Alper says even though the charity she grew up representing is done,
The We movement was so much more than an organization. They were the vision and the message that young people are the leaders of today and tomorrow and have the power and the responsibility to change the world. And that doesn't stop just because of the recent news.
she says it's up to people like her to continue the legacy. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
Yes, it is. Nathan Phillips Square may look a bit empty today as the city took down the Toronto sign, but don't worry, it will be replaced with a new and more durable version.
After 5 years, the present sign that's being taken down now was showing significant signs of wear and tear. The new and improved Toronto sign will be easier to clean, will in fact actually be waterproof, and will have enhanced lighting capacity and other creative features to support the public engagement and interaction that has become such an important part of the Toronto sign's life in Nathan Phillips Square.
It's been 5 years already. Crews got to work removing the old sign and starting installation of the new one. The original sign was built in 2015 for the Toronto Pan Am and Para-Pan American Games. It was only made to last a few weeks, but stayed in the square indefinitely, becoming a city landmark. The new sign will retain the maple leaf installed in 2017 for Canada's 150th birthday and the medicine wheel put in place to honor the National Indigenous Peoples Day back in 2018. You will be able to see the new sign installed in around a week. The iconic El Mocambo coconut tree sign will be lit up tonight as the venue hosts its first concert since renovations. Rock band Big Wreck will hit the stage. Greg Ross has more on the big live show and how Elmo's owner is doing what he can to keep Toronto's live music scene alive.
More than 5 months after their official grand reopening was scheduled, Toronto's iconic El Mocambo will host a live show tonight.
We had planned to open April 1st, and as it turned out, I think the April Fool's joke was on me.
Millions of dollars and several years of renovations later, part owner Michael Weckerly says they could have never guessed that their biggest obstacle in relaunching would be a worldwide pandemic, which has forced them to make tonight's reopening a little less grand.
We're going to be at 50 people, which is the allowable limit under COVID.
It's a fraction of what the El Mocambo would normally draw for a band like Big Wreck. It's necessary, though, to allow for safe physical distancing both on and off the stage. But they're hoping to bring the show to thousands more in their homes thanks to technology.
We have Big Wreck streaming under nugs.net and elmocambo.com.
And they'll be doing it using high-tech equipment that was brought in during the renovations at a time they had no idea just how valuable it could be.
It just happens to be a venue within a recording studio. And with all the great people that we have working here, I'm very excited to see how this first stream get the first one under the belt, as they say.
Today, the mayor said he too is interested in seeing how things go.
This is a big event in the city to have the Elmo open again.
But he couldn't commit to any financial help for the venue as they try to keep their head above water during the pandemic.
But there are provisions we put in place to allow a substantial tax break for live music venues, and I have no idea if they qualify or not, but they certainly would be happy to look at those criteria.
In the meantime, Weckerly says as long as they can have shows, they will. But he's crossing his fingers in hopes that they don't see a rise in COVID-19 cases, which could force the government to close down venues like his again.
We are walking on eggshells. I think everyone is.
Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
I know.
It is that time of year when Hollywood North moves to Toronto for the International Film Festival, but you may be watching some of those movies now on a smaller screen.
First time in our 45-year history, we're going to have movies in drive-ins, and we have a whole new digital platform as well.
We'll bring you more from what you can expect at TIFF this year after the break. It will be a TIFF like never before this year. The Toronto International Film Festival opens today, but there won't be the usual red carpets, splashy parties, or big celebrity sightings. Like most things, the festival had to be scaled back due to COVID-19 restrictions. I chatted with TIFF artistic director and co-head about how the show will go on while adapting to these crazy times.
Well, we're here at TIFF Bell Light Box, right outside of our own building. We will be screening films in the building during the festival, but with health measures in place, only 50 people maximum per cinema. We're going to have, hand washing stations, all of that going on, masks worn when you're inside the building. And we're also using drive-ins, which is an amazing thing this year. For the first time in our 45-year history, we're going to have movies in drive-ins, and we have a whole new digital platform as well, TIFF Digital Cinema, where we'll be showing films to people all across Canada that are in the festival.
Has it been a difficult time trying to figure this all out? It seems like a monumental task. Just trying to, how are we going to do this and still do TIFF?
What I have to say is that the team that works at TIFF, and they're mostly not working in this building, they're working remotely from home right now still. From March, when the lockdown first happened, we began talking about what the festival needed to look like. At first we thought by September we'd all be clear of this and we'd be part of the recovery.
Yes.
But it's clear that this is going to go on for a while, so all of our teams had to just pivot and figure it out, and we've been spending months doing that.
TIFF's mission is to transform the way we see the world through film, right? We're living in a time when we are now combating things like anti-black racism and trying to dismantle systemic racism. It has been a priority for this festival. How is that going to be reflected this year? What inside this festival will be part of that battle?
I think you'll see it from opening night. We're opening with a new Spike Lee film. It's an adaptation of David Byrne's stage piece from Broadway called American Utopia. And that film reflects some of what we've been experiencing over the last few months in terms of how do we use art to express outrage, to express resistance, to express some way of coming back from what we're seeing in the street in terms of racism. That's in the film, but we've also got many other films that I think are part of that. Regina King's directed a movie called One Night in Miami, which is set in 1964, but it's about how artists in particular and people with a platform respond to discrimination, to bigotry out there. We've also got people like Ava DuVernay doing talks. Halle Berry has a new movie. There's a very strong black presence, a very strong indigenous presence at the festival. Filmmakers like Michelle Latimer and Tracy Deer and others who have new films here. So you're going to see some of that sense of resistance, that spirit of just reacting to discrimination that many of us have faced for our whole lives in the films and as a part of the festival.
One of my favorite parts of the festival over the years, and I think I've been attending since it was the Festival of Festivals,
Yes.
way back when, was Planet Africa.
Yeah.
Because it was curated, and we felt like we're getting some of the best films from around the world from the African diaspora that we would not see on the big screen. I remember back in 2003, I saw young Idris Elba in One Love.
Yes.
I don't think I would ever have had a chance to see that movie if not for this festival. Will we be bringing that back and some of the focus on some of those films that aren't going to be big blockbusters but are beautiful films that people will need to see?
Yeah, it was 1995 when we started Planet Africa. We wanted to celebrate the 25th anniversary. And this year, having seen the murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and others and the resistance against the protests, we thought we need to really make a mark with what Planet Africa meant back then and connect it to what's going on now. So I invited 4 films, one by Canadian, Toronto filmmaker Charles Officer called Achilles Escape, 3 other movies that reflect the spirit of Planet Africa but that are brand new. And we're also going to be doing 2 online conversations, one with those 4 filmmakers who've got the new Planet Africa 25 films, and then a conversation with people from back in the day who put Planet Africa together. So we're excited about that. We're also bringing back an online version of the Planet Africa party. We're going to have DJ Dave Campbell spinning from right upstairs in this building.
You're bringing me back to those days, Kat. I remember those days being at those parties.
The party was the spot, man.
Yeah.
That was the thing.
You know what? We know it's going to be different, but we are all changing and trying to deal with this pandemic, and we're looking forward to see how TIFF adapts and still brings us a festival as best they can.
Thank you, man. We're trying to keep that spirit alive.
All
right.
All right. It wouldn't be TIFF without our Eli Glasner. He joins us now from King Street. And Eli, we're going to talk to you. Even though you're not on the red carpet with Angelina Jolie or Denzel, we still want to hear what you have to say, buddy. So tell us about the films that you have your eye on this year.
Angelina, you left me here on somewhat desolate King Street. Well, look, we still have movies and movie stars to enjoy, at least on the screen or inside the light box. Let me start with the opening film. I mean, just imagine this, Dwight. David Byrne and Spike Lee joining forces. That is American Utopia. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and they are opening with a film called American Utopia. David Byrne, as only he can, the lead singer of the Talking Heads, kind of remixing, reworking his amazing song catalog. This was a Broadway show. Amazing to see the choreography on the stage, and then who's capturing it behind the camera. Spike Lee of Do the Right Thing, The Five Bloods, and all the rest. And so you know it's going to have something to say, and I think maybe even something to say about this moment that we're in. So that's one to watch. I'm going to be queuing it up tonight. Then let's move on and take a look at One Night in Miami. Imagine this: Cassius Clay, Jim Brown, Sam Cooke, and Malcolm X walk into a bar. That is the setting for this movie, One Night in Miami. Now, with characters like that, it's already creating buzz. And the director, by the way, is Regina King. I mean, you know her from The Watchmen and so many others. So to see what she's doing behind the camera and how she's bringing these icons together, I've actually already started watching it, and it's amazing. I mean, it's these characters who are kind of at the height of American pop culture at the time, but still suffering humiliation and then come together. So that's One Night in Miami. Now let's move on and take a look at some photos from The Father. So this is Anthony Hopkins. Hopkins is always a force on the big screen, and here he's playing an elderly man who's battling dementia, but what makes it interesting is it's from his point of view. So think about that. As things happen, what he's seeing is actually changing because of the condition that he's suffering from. Really interesting stuff from Anthony Hopkins. Let's move on to some Canadians. Aquila's Escape is from Charles Officer. He's done some amazing documentaries like The Skin You're In and Unarmed Verses, but he's going back to feature film here, working with, I don't know if you know Saul Williams, amazing, I guess I'd call him a slam poet, but he's working with Saul for a tale about a drug dealer. And finally, Inconvenient Indian. This is from Michelle Latimer. This is taking the book by Thomas King and making it into a documentary, and it is epic and inspiring and incisive and at sometimes really informative, eye-opening, and that's from Michelle Latimer, who also has Trickster, the new CBC show, at TIFF. So it's a big festival for her, regardless of what capacity we're enjoying it in.
Yeah, I read Inconvenient Indian, the book. I can't wait. I didn't even know that they turned it into a film. So given the part virtual makeup of this festival, Eli, what are the challenges TIFF is facing this year?
I mean, the challenge is, and you've heard this from Cameron, the festival is smaller. Some of the big distributors, the big studios, Netflix, for example, aren't part of it. And the Academy Awards are later this year. They're happening in April. And so that really changes the way people see the fall festivals. Take a look at what this LA Film Watcher had to say.
It's not happening because they moved the Academy Awards. Again, the Academy, I still have no really good explanation why they moved it by 2 months, but by moving it 2 months, they made the season 2 months longer, which meant that starting in September is really too early, because then you have to maintain the race for another 2 months.
Now, I know Cameron Bailey would say different, but so the question of whether TIFF this year is that Oscar tastemaker is kind of up for debate, but there is an upside. I talked to Madeline Sims-Fewer, who is the star and one of TIFF's rising stars of a movie called Violation, and she actually sees an advantage for Canadian films this year. Take a look.
I think it's definitely this scaled down TIFF with only roughly 50 films and only 3 films in the Midnight Madness section. There's definitely more attention on the film than there may have been in previous years.
So there's the upside. I mean, when you're not battling the noise of like 250, 300 films, you can actually get a little more of the spotlight for yourself.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We don't turn into Hollywood North this year, but Canadians get a chance to shine too. Thank you, Eli.
Exactly. You're welcome.
A Toronto filmmaker turns a traumatic experience with police into a short film, and it's now premiering at TIFF.
This happened to me and my friends, but it happens to people, Black people in North America and in Europe every single day.
A conversation with filmmaker Kelly Fife Marshall on using her platform to raise Black voices. That's coming up a little later in the show. The financial cost of COVID-19 has been and continues to be hefty. According to a report released by Ontario's financial watchdog, the total spend on the pandemic this year and next year will be over $100 billion.
The numbers are just so big and so out of character, if you will, compared to past numbers in any type of a recession, recovery, government spending context. The number of people that have been affected, like the number of Ontarians that have benefited or have been recipients of this help, these are huge, huge numbers. 126
federal and provincial direct support measures were taken, adding up to $5.6 billion. Now, the bulk of the support, more than $50 billion, went to individuals through wage subsidies such as CERB. Another $42 billion went to businesses, but the report shows that the feds are footing most of the bill, accounting for 97% of the funds. The watchdog also found that Ontario is sitting on $6.7 billion of support to fight COVID-19, something the Premier was asked about today.
Well, we're flowing it as quickly as possible, and I don't have the exact answer because I haven't seen that. I guess it came out this morning. But I've told each ministry, as soon as you get those funds, you start flowing it right to the people that need it most.
Ford's government provided $10.8 billion in COVID-19 supports. However, all but $3.6 billion were offset by federal transfers. Jury trials will soon be starting again after a long delay due to the pandemic. The first jury selection is set to start next week, but it won't be happening in a courthouse. Lorena Redekop has more on what to now expect.
Some hearings have restarted inside courthouses, but so far no jury trials. It means way fewer people inside. They've also stepped up cleaning, added barriers for distancing, and also you have to wear a mask. The Attorney General's office says those same measures will be in place here at the Metro Toronto Convention Centre, where jury selection will soon take place. It's definitely big enough to allow for physical distancing, known for hosting big events. But the Crown Lawyers Association visited this morning and says nothing's ready yet.
There were no physical distance markings, no separation barriers in place. There's no plexiglass installed. There's no sanitizing stations. Security stations weren't in place.
The Ministry of the Attorney General says potential jurors will be screened 3 times. First, an online pre-screening when they receive a summons. It'll weed some people out early, cutting down on unnecessary trips. Second, an online check-in, 48 hours before the selection process. And then a third when they arrive at the location before they can enter the building. Defense lawyers aren't clear yet on what trials in the courtroom will look like when juries sit side by side near the judge.
They are not simply observers, so they can't be sitting in other locations in the courtroom, and so they should be able to see the witness, they should be able to see the accused person, they should be able to see both counsel.
An advocate for jurors says all of this makes changes he's been calling for even more critical, like being paid at least minimum wage.
It's going to make trials longer. It's going to make the juror's day longer, just getting in and out of the courthouse. We have to improve the safety and security of jurors, and we have to pay them better.
Some Ontario courthouses have already had COVID cases among staff.
The concern is that if you start and you're not safe, what ends up happening is if COVID-19 were to hit one person, it could basically put a screeching halt to the whole process.
The first jury selection is set to start Wednesday. Lorena Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
World Suicide Prevention Day is being marked in Toronto.
My family, like so many other families in our city and across Canada, has been touched by suicide. A majority of Canadians have been impacted by suicide.
We know that talking about suicide, when done in a hopeful and a respectful way, has the potential to change and to save lives.
Mayor Tory and representatives from the Centre for Addiction and Mental Health raising a flag in honor of the day. CAMH has also just launched a new campaign called Not Suicide, Not Today. According to the government, approximately 4,000 Canadians die by suicide every year. CAMH officials say over 90% of suicides are related to mental illness. Mental health also being addressed by the Premier today.
The government is investing an additional $14.75 million to further expand access to mental health and addiction services.
Doug Ford making today's funding announcement in Sudbury. He says the money will go towards resuming in-person counseling and virtual services. Today's announcement also includes funding for specialized services for Indigenous communities. And high-performance athletes are getting a leg up from the province. The government is investing $21 million to help athletes and their coaches train right here at home.
We're here today to reiterate our commitment to our high-performance athletes, those who are nationally carded and will compete on behalf of Ontario and our country in Olympics, in Commonwealth Games, and in other international events.
My journey has been a long journey, and with this, it's going to make it so much easier to step on the track and say, look, I got that support, and I'm going to give you guys all that I got.
Over $6 million will go to over 1,400 athletes to help offset costs of training and living expenses. The other $15 million will go to Canadian Sports Institute Ontario and the Coaches Association of Ontario. Our Toronto Raptors are headed for a Game 7 after pulling off a win in double overtime last night.
Backing in. Kyle, 33 points fading away. North Philly's finest.
That he is. The shot sealed the deal for the Raps with only 11 seconds left to play in the second overtime. The Raptors edged the Celtics 125-122. Kyle Lowry with a monster performance. The six-time All-Star had 33 points in 53 minutes, plus 8 rebounds and 6 assists. Norman Buckets Powell had 23 points off the bench, and Fred VanVleet added 21. But after a thriller that took double overtime to decide, do our Raps have enough left in the tank to pull off a win tomorrow?
I think everybody came in expecting a long series. I don't think we lived up to that in the first couple games, but able to work ourselves back into position to give us a chance. And pretty long game, longer than we all would have asked for, but time to get some rest and go back at it again.
You got to do whatever it takes to win basketball games. I mean, tonight myself, Pascal, Freddie, OG played 50 minutes, man. Like that's big time. That's big time stuff. That's what it takes to win a game like that, and we did whatever we needed to do.
And you did. Tomorrow's do or die Game 7 goes at 9 with the winner facing the Miami Heat in the Eastern Conference Final. I know you and we love the drama of sports, Colette, but that was too much at the end of that game last night. Wow.
I know. I feel like it didn't even need to go into the overtime.
No.
Like that non-shooting foul on that inbound. Like, why did we even have to go? Oh, my God. But it was exciting.
Yes, it was.
Playoff Powell's back. Woo! Oh, my God. Friday night's going to be something. And Friday's going to be something weather-wise, too. I mean, finally, we're going to have the sun back. We've been waiting for this as well. High pressure, it's coming back in. It's going to clear these skies out and give us some assured sunshine, which we need, because look at our temperatures. We've been running a little bit below seasonal, just struggling to get out of the teens, and we're readings looking like this right now. 16 degrees in Toronto and Oshawa, Hamilton 18, a little bit better St. Catharines. You got 19 degrees there. And the satellite, it shows you we've had that deep trough that's been going down there around the Rockies and through the central states, and that's really been that kind of storm track that's been pulling the systems that's been giving the heavier rain there for the upper Great Lakes, but also just been keeping us into the cloud deck, and that's finally going to be changing, the weather pattern changing and allowing that high pressure to be clearing those skies out. As I was saying earlier in the show, though, it's also going to be clearing these skies out and allowing some cooler temperatures here into northern Ontario, and that's why there's actually a frost advisory that's in place to the north of us, as these temperatures are going to be dropping down closer towards freezing. So certainly some single digits there. We're not worrying about that yet anyway, although we're getting closer towards fall and that kind of thing that we'll be seeing. We're just going to be talking about those temperatures there closer towards 10 degrees for our overnight lows, all right? But those clearing skies sets us up with that sunshine for tomorrow. We're going to hold it into Saturday for most of the day. Then late in the day Saturday, cloud cover coming in, some showers overnight Saturday into Sunday morning, and then hopefully we'll be clearing out by Sunday afternoon. But tonight, the temperature's looking like this, so we're not worried about that frost. Tomorrow looking like this with the sunshine back and even warming up a little bit. That too will be kind of nice to see as we're going into this weekend as well. Getting up closer towards seasonal, even a little bit above, Dwight.
Just confirming, you said we are not worried about frost.
No, we are not. In the GTA, we are not yet worried about frost.
Just checking. Thanks, Colette.
You can relax, Dwight.
Thank you, Colette.
You're welcome.
I'm Ismaila Alpha, host of Metro Morning. On tomorrow's program, as daily COVID cases are still developing and doors open at schools to those students who are returning to class, Mayor John Tory is my guest. Join me weekdays 5:30 till 8:30 for Metro Morning on CBC Radio 1.
There have been numerous incidents captured on video of innocent black people being accused of committing a crime by a white person. It happened to Toronto filmmaker Kelly Fife Marshall and her friends while visiting California. Now, Fife Marshall turned that trauma into art. She created a short film called Black Bodies, and it's earned a prestigious premiere at this year's TIFF. Maribel Tarouk spoke with her about the film and its message.
That draws me to the black sometimes. It makes
Black
me
Bodies
sit
is about what it's like to be black in the 21st century, and I mean essentially what it's been like to be black for the last hundreds of years, for the centuries. And so I find film, you know, is the only time when people really let their guard down. They really open up and their insecurities go away and they can just watch a film.
It's a 4-minute film, though. It's considered a short, yet there's so much packed into this. But maybe take me to the beginning and the motivation behind creating this film.
Yeah. So in 2018, along with Denisha and Comey, who are both starred in the film, we were in LA and we were doing a music festival, and essentially we had rented a rental property and we're checking out of this rental property, and an elderly white lady saw us and called the police on us because she thought we were robbing the place.
And there's like 3 black people stealing stuff.
Stealing stuff?
Yeah, like breaking into the house and taking.
No, we're taking our suitcases out of the house.
Right.
7 police cars and a helicopter showed up to detain us because they thought that we had broken into this rental property. And it was just a very traumatic experience, and I didn't know how to get through this trauma. After this had happened, I kind of flew back to Toronto and was working on a lot of other projects. But then we had to do like a media tour and went around and spoke. And I happily do it as an activist because it's important that I speak for people that don't get to speak. This happened to me and my friends, but it happens to people, Black people in North America and in Europe every single day.
How are you doing with that now? Where are you in processing all of that?
I think for me, it's really hard. I'm always on the go. And so I really do have a hard time processing and continuing to heal from it. I thought I was doing a good job. And then there's moments where like, I'll be in my car and taking my suitcase out of my car. And then I think people are watching. And so then I realized maybe I'm not doing such a great job healing. And so these are also the things that I want to share with people. I want people to know that for you, it was a 5-minute 911 call because you felt unsafe, but understand that the trauma that leaves with people for how long.
I'm curious to know whether this, at the outset of your career, was something that you envisioned yourself doing, becoming this activist and being this voice.
It's interesting. I've been in like film my whole life. I was a child actor. When I first started making like play films with like my friends when I was younger, it was just for entertainment. But then I realized that the power of me making a 4-minute film and watching everybody sit down and be totally glued to it, I was like, I have to do more with this platform. How could I just make you laugh or entertain you? There's got to be more that I can do. And so it wasn't the outset, but my previous film, Haven, also speaks about social issues also. And so if there's any way in my career that I can heal people, uplift people, and give people emotional intelligence, I think it's my responsibility as a human to do those things.
Emotional intelligence is important. A mix of sun and cloud today, or as Colette put it, that fireball in the sky decided to show up for a bit today. She will join us with one last look at your forecast. Stay with us, don't go anywhere, we're coming right back. While some leagues like the NHL and the NBA have seen great success in bubbles with no fans, tonight the NFL returns and thousands of fans are welcome.
They're going to be loud. That's the one thing I do know.
That's the head coach of the Kansas City Chiefs. They'll have home field advantage tonight when they take on the Houston Texans in the season opener. But instead of more than 76,000 fans in the stands, only about 17,000 will be allowed in. Masks will be required, concessions are limited, and fans, of course, will be spread out. And somebody will be cheering for KC tonight, and I was wondering if that red was Raptors red or KC red, because I know those are your two teams.
I don't generally put these two colors together, I have to say, Dwight.
It's KC
but
red.
These are the
I didn't even know you were going to do that.
Yes, I will be watching not from the stands, but safely from the comfort of my home tonight, watching my Mahomes and my Kansas City Chiefs. But you can watch right now this wonderful forecast that we have, because we are finally going to see the sun coming out tomorrow with some clearing skies tonight. So we are talking about 11 degrees, our overnight low. The frost advisory, didn't mean to frighten anybody with that. We are seeing that well to the north of us. Algonquin towards Parry Sound in those regions, you do have that frost advisory with some cooler temperatures tonight with that clearing. 11 degrees tomorrow with that sunshine, 20 degrees for our high temperature, and looking pretty good as we go into the weekend. Saturday night, some showers potentially moving in and lingering into Sunday morning, but some milder temperatures coming as well.
Looking good in the hat too. That's our shows for tonight. Thank you for joining us. Colette's lucky both her teams won a championship last year.